Today we're going to take on a new challenge, certainly for me, and that is we're going to build the cannon, and we're going to build the cannon stand. So let's get going. This is going to be built on the Sherline lathe. So the first thing we needed to do was to work out what wood we're going to use to make this. Some of you may remember I got some Lignum Vitae, which is the most dense wood in the world. It's still green, which means it's actually a very good time to mill it. Most people who make bowls on a lathe actually do it when the wood is still wet. I'm also going to make up a blank of Wamara. Wamara is a hardwood out of Guyana, not as dense as this, but fairly high up in terms of the dense woods. There are 14 guns on the boat, so I'm suggesting I'm going to make up 20 in total. They are 6-pounders, and David said they were short 6s. I'm not going to really go into that in any great detail. The monogram was the King George III, which had his initials and a crown on it. The cannon is 6 feet 8 inches long. The first reinforcement, which is at the back here, is 14 inches. At this point, which is the lowest point, it's 8 inches. And then back at the swell, at the edge of the swell, which is where it comes out, I estimate it's 12 inches. So those are the key dimensions. The trunnions are 3.5 inches, the same as the bore. The bore is 3.66, slightly bigger than the ball, which was 3.5 inches. That's a number 50 drill to drill that hole out. The next step is to make up a little template, which will help me line up the various bands and pieces when I put it on the lathe. I have a template on either side of the stick, because you can make it with the button facing out or in. It depends on how you've decided to machine the piece. I want the button to be sticking out so that I can do this complicated cut, which probably is going to be done a bit by hand. I want that sticking out of the lathe. This is actually the second cannon I'm making, so I went through all the learning process. So it's a tapered cannon, so the first thing we need to do is to take out the lock, which is inside. And so that allows us to rotate the head. My experimentation has shown that it's around 4.5 to 5 degrees, so that's what I'm going to set it at. The first thing we're going to do is round the square, starting at the back and working towards the head. Once that is done, we start to work on the end of the piece. That's just how my preference is, marking off all the spots as we go along. If you want to make sure that the taper is perfect, you'll have to use the main cutting tool on the lathe. You can't freehand the taper because it just won't be consistent. And then again, take small bites. Don't try to do this quickly. I screwed up quite a few pieces by getting a little aggressive or overconfident, and I broke 2 pieces actually doing this. You'll notice a whole range of different gouges, files. The truth is, you use anything that will work for you. Just use things that are very gentle on the piece and that take off very small pieces at a time. There's the second one, not fully cleaned up yet. This is the first one. And there is See, the first one is spot on. Second one came out a bit longer. So I made a little mistake with made this a little too long. So there's a third one, and if necessary, a fourth one. So we'll keep working on these until we get the best possible one that we will use to go to my friend's jeweler shop, and he's going to show me how to make a mold, and then how to cast the units. This may be the last one, so we're again going to attack it different. We're going to hand cut the button and the aft end of the cannon. As you can see, I wasn't happy with the first two, so I'm now on number 3. And this time I'm trying my hand carving certainly the button and all of the various pieces as we go. So I'm going to switch from the fixed cutter to handheld cutters, and what I'm finding is I'm getting much more control over the piece, and I'm getting much more detail that I wasn't getting trying to use the fairly inflexible hand cutter. However, it's impossible to do the taper with the hand gouges. You have to use the main cutting tool that allows you to run along the taper. The technique for lining up the hole for the gudgeon is to recenter the head and the tail so you can hold the piece. Take the measurement of the plan so you get it straight up and down, and I put a very thin starter hole, put it at an angle just to catch it. And now that I've caught it, straight up and down. And now you progressively come with bigger drills and open it up. If you're not comfortable with the drill, you can always use a hand drill to make the hole. I have no doubt that I'm going to end up making at least 5 or 6 of these before I get one that is correct, because remember, this is going to be the mold. Interestingly enough, the first one is pretty damn good. Anyway, I have another blank here of Lignum Vitae, and I have a blank somewhere. There we go. This is the Wamara, a darker wood. Now we're on to number 4, and again the technique is improving, it's getting better. I move in between the hand gouges and the machine cutter to do the taper, hand gouges to do the fine work. The one thing I'd remind you that each time you're going to do one of those straps, to make sure you don't go too far down on the taper, because you actually have to come out. Otherwise you'll cut it down too much. Here are the first 4. Each one gets better in one sense, and I end up making a mistake, but what I'll do now is really, you've seen the learning process, and really going to summarize the technique that's really not going to change going forward, to give you an idea how to go about making these cannons. Just a quick recap. The first thing we do is center the piece on the lathe, using the tailstock and the head to make sure that the piece is as best centered in the head. Then we set the head at a 4.5 degree angle, which allows us to cut the taper. Then we take the piece down to 13 inches, which in scale is 0.275, and that will give us the 13 inches at the base ring, which is the largest ring just at the tail of the cannon. And when we go to the forward end of the muzzle, the thinnest part is 8 inches, and that should give us a little more. That should give us about 8¼ 8½ inches at that thinnest point. If you want at this stage, you can bring the very end of the cannon or the muzzle down to 11 inches, which is the outer distance of the swell. You can now check the lowest part of the muzzle, and you want something around 190, 187. You don't want it as low as the thinnest part, which is 8 inches, which is 0.1667. Now you take a template and mark out the cannon, because you're now going to take the hand gouges and mark the outside edge of these rings that support the cannon, and you want to take the forward edge of the ring, because each time you're going to take the barrel down a little bit. So we put the hand gouges on now and establish those rings. Now, starting at the back, or the outer end of the piece, you're going to create the button, which is 8 inches in diameter and 8 inches long. Now you're going to round off the button right up on the inside and the outside. Just follow the directions, and you're going to taper the back of the cannon to the base ring. And you're going to do these with the hand gouges, different types, smaller the better, and sandpaper to round that button and to get a nice even shape. If you measure the inside diameter of the taper, you should get 11½ inches. And you're going to do this with the block that is mounted on the sliding table. This is the space between the base ring and the vent astragal. I hope that's correctly spelt. So now you're going to take down the space on the barrel between the vent astragal and the first reinforcement ring. And you're going to do this with the bit that is mounted on the cross slide. Now you do the same thing with the barrel, using the same cross slide between the first reinforcement ring and the second reinforcement ring. Now you move further down the barrel, and you're going to take down the barrel between the second reinforcing ring and the chase astragal. Finally, we'll take the barrel down between the chase astragal and the muzzle astragal. Now we're back to the hand gouges, and we're going to look at the photograph or the drawing on the book and try and reproduce that shape at the end of the muzzle. We're almost done. We now need to take the swell, which is almost the very end, down to 11 inches, which is 0.229. The last thing we need to do is recess a small ridge on the face of the muzzle, and then use the cut-off blade to cut the piece off the blank. You can actually use this to also make that recess. And here is that final cannon, and I think this is as good as it's going to get. I've come to realize that there's going to be much more than one video. It could actually end up to be 3 or 4 videos, so I'm not going to stretch it out. You've seen the basic technique. I'm probably going to do a few more. Certainly number 1 and number 4 are excellent, but they're not perfect. So why not hone the talent and see how much better I can get it. We'll see you in the next video. Enjoy your modeling.